Here's a short one, actually. By the way, are you confused? Am I being fair on both sides? Does anyone think I didn't do justice to one side or the other? I don't know. Do you care? Dude, am I all right? Am I being mostly fair? Oh, my God. Dude, and by the way, I might be a little bit hard. Trump people, I might be a little bit hard on Donald Trump right now, but this MFer knows nothing about immigration, and he's surrounding himself with people who know nothing about immigration. And let me tell you about some people that know something about immigration. Immigrants increasingly create fiscal deficit. Absolutely. It appears as though they do. Okay? Immigrants actually cost. The question is, do immigrants, on one hand, and undocumented immigrants also, like two different groups of people, because we're talking about two different groups. We're talking about immigrants, then we're talking about undocumented immigrants. Do they cost more than they actually give back to society? So, for example, undocumented immigrants, many pay taxes because the employers take taxes out of their paycheck, and they don't get any of that. They're paying into Social Security. They're paying into local taxes, state taxes, federal taxes. They got 5 people using the same Social Security number. They're not submitting tax forms at the end of the year and getting all that money back like many of you will, because you don't make much money, so you get a full refund. They're not doing any of that. They're paying into the system day after day, year after year, and they're not going to retire with Social Security money. Their kids aren't going to school. They're not getting many, many, many benefits that they could get. You say, like, wow, all right, so, undocumented immigration must be a good thing because they're doing all this work for us and we're not paying much. They're paying taxes, we get all this money, and they're not collecting. It's like, nah, because they also cost money. Undocumented workers cost money. Like, we have to fund the Border Patrol, and we have to fund, they will use certain services, and they will. It's like, nah, it still does. Do they cost more than we benefit? Like, I don't know. Like, who's to say? I don't know. It goes back and forth, okay? So, this group of 20 scholars, very thoughtful scholars in the American, the Academy of Sciences, okay? In the National Academy of Sciences, they said, we want to see if immigrants actually create money or they cost us money, okay? Fiscally, is there a deficit with immigrants, okay? So they got 20 people and they said, don't be political on this at all. And they weren't political. Very, very smart people who are looking at it from economics perspective and a political perspective and democratic perspective, demographic and so on, all sorts of different perspectives, okay? And 3 years you're going to look at this issue. And they looked at many aspects of immigration to say, is this positive or negative? And that's what you need, right? 3 years. These are people who dedicate their entire lives to this issue. Bring them together, 3 years, come up with your conclusions, okay? This is where you want to go. It's not knucklehead politicians. It's not Sam Richards. Don't ask me, and certainly don't ask me 20 or 30 years ago when I'm totally ideological and I'm not being thoughtful and I'm not being middle of the road. And so they came up with a couple of things. They look at tax receipts from immigrants and the cost of providing services, okay? So you get people pay taxes. You know why we pay taxes? Those of you who don't like paying taxes, you know why you pay taxes? So people can do things like shovel the snow off the highways when it snows. So you have clean water. So there are all sorts of reasons you pay taxes. You have to pay taxes. We're in a big collectivity. So you pay all the taxes. Now you got all this money here, right? Well, who's spending that money? Do immigrants pay more in taxes than they actually take out of the system? Or do they pay less in taxes than they take out of the system? Okay, so they're looking at that. This is National Academy of Sciences, right? Are we good? Fundamental question. You got the question, right? So here we go. On a year-to-year basis, the taxes that immigrants pay do not cover the public expenditures that they trigger by at least $50 billion a year, at least. And maybe 2 or 3 times that. These are immigrants. These are not undocumented immigrants, you all right? So they don't, meaning that immigrants to the United States, people living in the United States who are immigrants and working here, do not pay enough taxes to cover all of the services that they use on a yearly basis. See, are we clear, right? We're clear, right? Are we good, bro? Okay, so immigration is bad, you say. Well, why should we have immigrants here? Because, that's not a good thing. All right, I don't know. What's that about? So go next one. Okay, so what do immigrants bring that's worth $50 billion? Now, do I believe that number, by the way? Yeah, basically, it makes sense. These are pretty thoughtful people. They're very thoughtful. It's probably about the best number you're ever going to get. It's 3 years of looking at it. Okay? So what's worth $50 billion? Are they worth $50 billion? What are you going to look at? Listen, man, I can be as critical of the United States as anybody. But there's one thing about the U.S. that's really pretty amazing. It's the U.S. We are, in so many ways, the most amazing country the world has ever known. And I say that as someone who travels everywhere. Every country I go to and I've lived in, I think this is the most amazing country I've ever been in. Oh my God. So many places. I've lived around the world, so many places. I'm like, wow, I love everywhere I am. I love the place, I love the people, I love the culture. And the United States, wow, are we, even with slavery and genocide, we are an amazing country. Amazing. And we're largely amazing because of immigration. Because we are a nation that brought people from all over the world. Rich people, poor people, different religions, different backgrounds, different desires, brought them all into this space called North America, called the United States, to create this place called the U.S. And who are most of these people? They are people who were seeking something other than what they had. Y'all know, St. Patty's Day, you're all out just partying away, and maybe what? Do you know how many students I know personally, that have asked me to get them into Penn State, that if I got them into Penn State, they wouldn't spend a moment drinking beer at St. Patty's Day? You know where they would have been all weekend? In the library. Places really understanding, let me understand life in a deeper way. They would be just oh my, and you're just whatever, right? There's something about being an immigrant, y'all, right? The lazy people don't come here, y'all, right? Lazy people don't come here. You know who comes? Because when I go to Mexico and I'm hanging out in Mexico, there are plenty of people chilling in Mexico, man, in the parks. And Mexico's a cool place, by the way. Mexico's awesome. When I go to Mexico and I go to little towns like a Puebla or something, and you go downtown on a Friday afternoon or Friday night or Saturday or Sunday afternoon, and the park is just filled with people just sitting, not partying, not drinking, just sitting, and people just strolling. Thousands of people, just this amazing place, dressed to the nines, and with their boots and their cowboy hats, and I'm like, oh, what awesome, and they're just living. But in the midst of all those people, are people that want something more. More, man. I want something more. And a lot of those people are the ones who come to the U.S. And if it's not from Mexico, it's from somewhere else. And they'll do whatever they got to do to get to the U.S. And they're hungry. And they will work really hard. And they will take your spot at Penn State in 2 seconds before you even know it. They'll be outperforming you here at Penn State. You have no idea even what's going on. They'll outperform you in your jobs. They'll work twice as hard, twice as long, twice as whatever. Because the world, there's 7.3 billion people in the world, and I can get plenty of them that would replace every one of us in this room, myself included. And so that's what the U.S. is filled is a history filled with people with dreams and aspirations to come here and make something better than what they had, leaving something behind. And much of what they left behind was amazing also, but they just wanted more, more, more. And that's the U.S., and that's what immigrants bring here. They bring something that you just can't tap. You can't understand. It's amazing. And is that worth $50 billion? In a heartbeat, it's worth $50 billion. It's worth $500 billion. Because if you look at the U.S. and the creation, and you look at like the tech world, Silicon Valley, your phones, my God, the phones, everything, right? You know puts that together? You know who's responsible for that more than anybody else? Immigrants, man. Right there, immigrants to the U.S. Fuck. So yeah, is it good, is it bad? I don't know. They bring something. Dude, somebody asked me a question, man. Somebody kick. Yeah, bro. Jiggy, you get that. This is what I get that. Shit. All right, dog.
When that group of 20 did the study, they talked about a lot of taxes and what was actually brought into the government or into the economy via like what's taken out of their paychecks. Does that take into account at all anyone who's paid under the table, or does that talk about
no?
Portion?
They were not looking at undocumented immigrants. They were looking at legal immigrants. All those numbers there are legal immigrants.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And they were looked at lots and lots of different things, by the way. Like how quickly people assimilate, how, all the positive and negative. It's awesome. But you all understand. What's my point here, right? My point is, look, when you hear blowhard politicians, wait, hang on. When you hear blowhard politicians or whoever, or news people, I don't know, who have really simple answers to complex questions, all I want you to say is, that's not true. Because it's not true. I don't know what is true, but I know that most anything that any blowhard, myself included, says about a complex issue like this is not true. It's way too complex. That's what I want. I want you all just to stop and be confused and not accept this dumb stuff. My God, there's so much dumb stuff. Myself included, by the way. I've said so many dumb things in my life. Hey, who else has a question, man? Who else has got a question?
So from a human rights standpoint, can we say it's okay to deport people who come here and form gangs, even though we know that when they go back to Central America, they're tearing apart their own countries? Like the MS-13 and 18th Street gang.
No, yeah, I actually think that's a problem, right? So part of the issue here is, and by the way, if you look at how those gangs got formed, do you know how they got formed?
I assume just because they're poor and they have...
No, you got to look at the war. Like in El Salvador, like the Honduran gangs and the Guatemaltecos and the Salvadorans and so on, those gangs have their roots in El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. And they have their roots in a civil war that was fueled by the United States. And so from a human rights perspective, we even have more responsibility for that happening.
So if we keep deporting them, won't they keep destroying their own country?
Yeah, then they go back and destroy their own country. Yeah, I have a couple of friends who just... it's just dangerous for them to even be in like San Salvador. Yeah, so it's a problem.
But then why would it be our responsibility to hold them here?
Well, here's the problem, right? I'm not saying it's our responsibility, right? I don't know. It's too complex, right? But what I'm saying is we are partly responsible for the creation of those gangs, not just because of poverty, but because of our policies in Central America. And so when you do that, you have to say, oh my gosh, all right, so now it gets even more complex. Yeah, that's a really cool question, by the way. Dudes, wait, I have something I need to say. And I'm going to say it. If you're leaving now, so many people have tests and quizzes and stuff, but you probably need to listen to what I'm about to say right now. Look, it says very clearly in the syllabus, and we've told you, you have to check gradebook for your grades. So when you submit your video assignment and it doesn't actually end up in the Dropbox, that's your fault. It's not our fault. Because all you got to do is go back in Angel and make sure it's there. It'll take you an extra 30 seconds. But if you don't do that, you can't come back to us and say, well, I put it in. And it's like, no, that's why it says in the syllabus, you have to check. It's your responsibility. So you need to start doing that. After the break, there's zero leeway in that, okay? Are we cool?